Hello everyone, my name is Sasha Leidman. I'm a PhD candidate at Rutgers University, Department of Geography, and today I'm going to be talking about initiatives for fostering inclusive polar policies. I am the project group leader for the APEX DEI project group, and we've been doing a number of different initiatives to foster inclusion through that group. But this presentation, I'll be talking as my own individual and not as a representative of APEX. What I really want to address is some of the really problematic areas within polar science around inclusive issues. One of them being harassment. And so we know from research that 71% of women and 41% of men have experienced harassment while in the field. This was research done by Clancy of Antarctic researchers. And so this is extremely troubling. And it gets even worse when we look at students and postdocs, who 86% of women and 75% of men have experienced assault while in the field. And so this is a serious problem affecting the majority of researchers that we send off to polar regions. This is only made worse by the fact that only 22% of researchers during this study know how to report harassment for their field site. And so a lot of people feel like they're in the dark and have nowhere to turn to. And it's made a lot of people feel excluded and has led to the leaky pipeline within our field. To address this, a number of polar agencies have created these polar inclusive initiatives and steering committees, such as the APEX DEI group, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which I am affiliated with, but it also has included the diversity initiatives through BASS, the National Science Foundation and its updated harassment policies, the Juneau Ice Fields, JEDI initiatives, and IARPIC's collaboration D&I working group, which have all done some fantastic work to try to create more resources in this space. So the problem, though, with a lot of those diversity committees, though, is that women are 2 to 3 times more likely to serve on diversity committees than men. On the left here, we see that this is the proportion of AGU cryosphere members and students that are male or female. Unfortunately, we don't have non-binary information. And you can clearly see how much of a leaky pipeline there is and how overrepresented we are in male researchers. However, that's just not seen in these diversity committees, which have significantly more female representation than men. And what this means is that a lot of the burden for solving the issues of harassment and inclusive policies is left to women, and men are free to work on their research while women are burdened with the task of trying to solve these problems, which is really unfortunate. On top of that, a lot of the institutional responses to injustice and harassment have been really lackluster. For example, we just had a journalist release a piece about her experience on one of the Mosaic Arctic vessels and how during that expedition there was a number of sexist policies, such as not allowing women to wear quote-unquote hot pants, and really putting the onus of reducing harassment on the women and not on the men. As a result of this article that came out, AWI, Alfred Wegener Institute, released this statement on the left, which you can see they're just merely claiming that the article was misleading and unfair and pointing to their gender equity in order to point out that this actually isn't a problem, while still ignoring the fact that they have not created an inclusive space during this expedition. Apex is far from free from these blames as well. We had a number of individuals within Apex leadership present significant pushback during the Black Lives Matter protests, and were reluctant to release any form of a statement because they wanted to maintain being apolitical. And it took a significant number of meetings and pressing on them in order for them to allow US Apex to finally release it. Even though this was an international event that we felt like, they felt that it was best to just keep it to the US, which we found unfortunate. And so a lot of these institutional problems can be summarized into these 4 different categories of virtue signaling. That's using your platform only to show how virtuous you are instead of using it to help people. Staying nonpartisan, which we continue to find disagrees with critical race theory and is really hypocritical and leads to some really destructive actions of institutions trying to stay away from these issues, even though the issue of harassment and inclusion are inherently political things. Also, performative allyship, really just doing things that look good, as well as tokenism. This is an example of a call for applications for the IASC fellowship, in which they are requesting one of the applicants that apply be an Indigenous member, instead of potentially claiming, oh, we can have as many Indigenous fellows as we'd like, and not try to tokenize that one individual and make them be the representative for all Indigenous communities. But I do not want to just cast blame without also saying that I have contributed to some of these problematic inclusive policies. This is a Facebook post that I released on my Facebook page, which was clearly performative allyship. And feel free to read it if you would like. But the main takeaway is that back in 2016, during the height of the Me Too movement, I released this statement, and a number of my friends called me out on it, and it really got me realizing just how dangerous it is in order to release something without actually putting in the effort to make substantive changes. And it really got me to realize that I need to be a part of this movement and create resources for improving inclusion. So I highly recommend, if you know people, especially men, who demonstrate some of these problematic inclusive tendencies, to call them in and make sure that they know that in order to help in these areas, you really need to be doing more than just releasing statements and virtue signaling. And so we take that philosophy within the APEX DEI project group. That's the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion project group. And so through that group, we kind of act as an umbrella organization for a number of different inclusive activities throughout APEX. That's included creating a resources page and database that's hosted on our webpage that includes over 100 resources and articles about DEI-related issues that people can search for in order to learn more about inclusive issues. It's included creating a mentorship database. So APEX has a number of volunteer mentors that people can ask questions, and ECRs, early career researchers, that have any questions about how to continue in polar science can ask them. And through the DEI group, we contacted some of these mentors and figured out who had any training or experience with inclusive policies. And so if anybody had any questions about how to deal with being marginalized or experiencing harassment, that they could specifically go to these mentors who had experience with that. Additionally, we've organized a number of different webinars. We've hosted webinars on working with Indigenous communities, on how polar agencies can change their policies to be more inclusive, as well as harassment on harassment in the field, and addressing implicit bias. And so these webinars have been extremely well attended, and we continue to plan more webinars into the future. And then additionally, we've developed a code of conduct and bill of rights for polar fieldwork. That code of conduct is on our website, you can see here, and it's a very useful document for any polar field team that wants to increase their inclusivity within their team. So it outlines how prevalent and harassment is and why it's important to address it. It also outlines the best way for team members to interact with each other and recognize each other's work and respect each other's personal boundaries. Then it goes into defining harassment and unacceptable behavior and assault, and what to do if you ever experience those inappropriate behaviors. That includes how to contact an individual if you experience harassment. And so we found that this document is really useful in order to help prevent harassment and maintain a healthy relationship between each of the team members while doing polar fieldwork. Additionally, we came up with a Bill of Rights. So we think it's important that every team member has rights while they're in the field, and so it's important to know how much respect that you should have while you're doing field work. So that includes a right to rest. Each team member can take a rest day if they're too physically or mentally exhausted to do the work, and they should not be judged for taking that rest day. They have a right to communication. All team members have the right to use satellite communication devices in order to contact people outside of the field team throughout the field season, and they do not need to disclose that they're using those satellite communication devices. They have a right to privacy. So field team members have their own living area that is off limits to other team members during the field season, unless explicitly stated that somebody can enter. They have a right to safety. So no team member is required to do any task that they personally deem as unsafe. And we want people to feel as safe as possible while they're in these dangerous locations. And then lastly, the right to anonymity. If a team member experiences harassment, they have a right to maintain anonymity throughout the reporting procedure. This helps in making sure that people don't feel too burdened by the reporting process. So importantly, this Code of Conduct and Bill of Rights is not just a document that you sign and forget about, but we also included important, helpful tips for implementing it in order for it to be as effective as possible. This includes having the group all meet together, read the Code of Conduct out loud, discuss any questions that they might have, and sign the document together so that each individual has their own signed copy that they can refer to. This is our field team in Greenland. Before we go out into the field, we met in Kangaluswag to read over the document and make sure that everyone was on the same page. and that everybody had a signed copy of the document afterwards. That meeting also assigned roles, including the expedition lead, the medical lead and safety lead, comms lead, so that everyone knew what their responsibilities were before ever hitting the ice. And then also importantly, we established an outside point of contact so that if there are any violations of the code of conduct, such as harassment, people knew exactly who to contact and who that person was. This is us going over all of our comms equipment, our satellite phones and radios, so that each of the team members felt confident in how to use that satellite phone without having to ask another team member how to use it while they're in the field. And this is us unanimously voting to implement the code of conduct. Luckily, everyone was on board. And so I want to leave you all with this quote from Tracy Sheely. She's the field operations manager out of Kangaluswak, who said that groups that have solid foundations of accepted behavior the team has agreed to / committed to are better equipped to deal in real time and emerge more strongly / coherently from field challenges. I think risk management is best woven throughout planning and decision making and actions, and preventing harassment is a key component of overall risk management. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I'm welcome to hear any questions that you may have about what I presented. And special thanks to everyone involved with the Apex DEI team, Alex, Carrie, Morgan, Lauren, Emily, as well as my funding provider, NSF TRFP. Thank you.